one podcast, mining the Magic the Gathering community for salt. This is the Howling Salt Mine.
It's the Howling Salt Mine. The Howling Salt Mine.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to a very special episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, the podcast where we usually delve into those salty mines of the Magic the Gathering community, find the saltiest stories, the saltiest posts, put them in our mine cart, and bring them right back up to you, our dear prospectors at home. We usually do that. Today's a little bit different. As always, I'm your host, Sam, and I'm joined by my two lovely co-hosts, Mike and Tony. Say hey, guys.
What up, what up, what up? Hello, hello.
Hello, hello indeed. And that's right. This is a very special episode. There's a fourth person in the minecart with us today, and it's Wizards of the Coast.
Hashtag sponsored.
Hashtag gifted.
Hashtag sponsored. We can finally say it, folks. That's right. Look at me now, Mom.
But you told me I couldn't say it. Hashtag sponsored.
We used to say that jokingly. Now we can actually say it. Hashtag sponsored. This is an actual sponsored episode. Your boys did it. Look at us. Look at us go. We're doing it.
Look at us embassing.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
We are embassing so hard in this episode. But seriously, thank you to Wizards of the Coast for reaching out to us, asking us to be ambassadors for the Duskmourn set and produce a little bit of content for them. And thanks for giving us a little bit of preview product. We're super excited. We're going to do some pack openings on our social media, kind of experiment with some fun new things. We're really excited to jump into this set, and we're excited to talk about it today, too.
But also likely some giveaways too.
Ooh, yeah, some giveaways as well. Some giveaways well for our passionate prospectors out there, for the faithful prospectors who tune in every single week. And if you enjoy today's content and you want to support the Howling Salt Mine and our endeavors to work with Wizards of the Coast more, we have a little link in the show notes that if you click on it, you can pre-order Duskmourn product, you can peruse the card list, and clicking on that shows that we did a good job and that you appreciate the ambassador program and want to support it. Other ways to support us are just to interact with our social media, all of our sponsored posts, like it, send it to your friends, comment on it. All of that interaction, it shows Wizards of the Coast that we're doing a good job, that we're providing a service to them, and that we're worth bringing back for future ambassador programs. It would be super exciting for us, and we hope that you would love it as well, because we're really looking forward to this episode. For the new folks out there, if this is your first episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad that you found your way here through the twisting turns of the internet, and hopefully you're interested in hearing about a little bit of Duskmourn. Something that you need to know about the Howling Salt Mine is that we are connoisseurs of salt. We're experts in salt. And today we're going to be talking about the salty cards in Duskmourn. All of those cards that are going to get you frustrated, a little bit angry, basically anything that's going to make somebody go on Reddit and write one of those really angry posts that we would then take and read on another episode of the Howling Salt Mine.
But Sam,
Yes, Tony?
what is salt?
Great question, Tony. Thank you for asking. Salt is frustration in the game, as we like to say here in the Howling Salt Mine. We treat it as an umbrella term. Salt is anything that is going to get you frustrated in a game, from an edict effect that's making you sacrifice a creature every single turn, to maybe you're just one of those players that hates board wipes. Maybe you're really, really salty and you hate single target removal. Well, if you're one of those last ones, we probably don't have many cards for you today because we're focusing on the really salty stuff. But we're going to be talking about all different kinds of salt today because, as people know, we like to talk about salt so that we can learn from it and hopefully not be salty in a future game of Magic the Gathering.
Hell yeah.
As we like to say, it's an edumagicational podcast.
Yeah. Hashtag sponsored.
So let's start edumagicating.
Let's start edumagicating.
Let's edumagicate.
But first, you might be asking, what is Duskmourn? Well, let me sum it up as quickly as I can. I'll try. Duskmourn is a new plane that we haven't been to yet. It's sort of a horror themed plane, And it's based on fear and pain and the hunger of this demonic ruler, which we will talk about soon. Basically, the whole concept of Duskmourn was that there was this demon that got bound to this spooky house, and the demon slowly expanded the confines of the house more and more and more until it completely took over this plane. And the demon can open up a door every once in a while, pull people into this massive sprawling house, and then it feeds off of their fear and their pain while they are sort of like tortured by all the malevolent little entities in there. And then the people that are trapped inside Duskmourn, trapped inside the house, are trying to survive and, you know, team up with some of the entities that are benevolent that live in the house and, you know, hopefully not die. So lots of spooky stuff. It's got some like horror movie references and things like that. There's a bit of like an 80s flair to it
I was gonna
as
say,
well.
It feels like Stranger Things meets It.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very fair. Spooky vibes, spooky card art. If you're into those freaky weird little guys that appear on cards every once in a while, this is the set for you. You can get some of those freaky little weirdos and you know, little gremlins and whatnot.
Little gremlins.
Gremlins are in this set.
Maybe a little sneak peek right
Are
there.
there gremlins?
Yeah, there are gremlins in this set.
There are gremlins.
Nice.
Well, let's jump into it.
Let's get in there.
Let's freaking do it, guys. If Tony sounds a little more contained than he usually is, it's by design.
yeah. For the good prospects at home, if we sound a little bit more like we're holding back, it's because
we're
shooting for a PG-13 rating today, you know? So we're you'll hear lots of friggin' and things like that today. All right, let's jump into the salty cards. We're going to go in Wooburg order, and we're going to start with the main Duskmourn set. And then later on in the episode, we're going to cover just a few cards that are from the Duskmourn Commander set, a few of the salty cards that are in those precons. So our first card comes to us from White. This is from the main set of Duskmourn, and our first card is Split Up.
I knew it.
You know, we have to have some board wipes on here. A lot of EDH players hate board wipes. In our play group, we're kind of not a fan just because they prolong the game. They definitely have their space in the game. And I must say, I do love an asymmetrical board wipe. So Split Up is our first salty card here. It costs 1 and 2 white. It's a sorcery. And it says, choose one, destroy all tapped creatures, or destroy all untapped creatures.
I think the thing I don't like about this most is how cheap it is.
3 mana, dude. 3 mana. But it's got the 2 white pips, you know?
Oh, come on. I hate when people say that.
This card is sick. This
card
card is
gas.
so good.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I love this.
You untap, first main phase, wipe the board.
Everything's dead.
Like mostly an asymmetrical wipe, right? If people are attacking out, if people are tapping down all of their mana dorks in their turn, chances are like 80 to 90% of the board is tapped down.
Or if they aren't, you get a big swingy in. You send all your stuff at the weakest guy, and then
Yeah.
you destroy all the untapped creatures.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
So no matter what you want to do, there's usually a mode that you can play this on. It gets a little awkward on like a big gummed up board where some things are tapped and some things are untapped and
Mhm.
you don't have clean attacks. Like there will be moments where it's a little awkward, but whew, this handles a lot of cases.
I think one of the things I really like is that it's a whiteboard wipe that isn't splitting off of creature power, because that's something that we see so common where it's like destroy everything with power 3 or greater, destroy everything with power less than 3, you know, and you kind of have to make that distinction. But having it be an untapped versus tap setup is, I don't know, it's just an interesting design space. I dig it.
What I actually think is interesting is, as we have it up, there's 2 different arts. The art treatment on the one is kind of interesting. I haven't seen any of these yet.
Oh, you talk about the haunted technology frame there, Tony?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But I like that the flavor text on both of these is drastically different. So one is like, don't be a wimp. We'll cover more ground this way. And then the other one's like, whatever happens, we need to stick together. It's just kind of like
very different vibes. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm never looking at the flavor text so immediately next to one another, and they're so drastically different. And I kind of love it.
The all caps OG is
that's what's
eye-catching.
really got me.
Do you think this is going to make people salty?
I don't know. I mean,
Yes. What do you mean? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
That's just because you're thinking about putting it in decks and upsetting people. Like,
Hey, I mean, well, what can you do,
yeah.
Personally, I think board wipes are always going to make some Magic players salty just because, when you have the full stacked board and you're fully tapped out and you lose everything, if you lose everything to a 3-mana spell, you're going to be salty. You're going to get a little grumpy, The blowout to the ratio of mana spent is like, someone spends Cyclonic Rift and they drop whatever it is, 6 mana, 7 mana, 6?
7.
They pay 7 mana for that. Makes sense. Yes, you're going to do a big swingy thing. 3 mana and you blow up my board? All right, I'm a little grumpy.
I think what makes people grumpy with this is that you can cast this and still have the biggest problem on the board, but get rid of most other things. Yeah. So like if I'm somebody who loses my whole board and there's still a super problematic thing, I'm like, well, why did you do this?
Yeah, I think the saltiest part about this is going to be that there's this like illusion of the ability to dodge it. Like if you get hit with this, you're going to be like, oh, why didn't I just attack with this one extra creature? Or like, oh, why didn't I just leave this up?
Yep.
And then there's also going to be a moment where someone plays something that taps down all creatures and then casts this. And that's going to feel even worse.
And spoiler alert, there are some cards that do that in this set. I think we have one that does some pretty big taps. The last thing I'll say about this card is that flavor-wise for the design of the set, I think it's pretty interesting because the survivors in the set all have effects that trigger in the second main phase if they're tapped. So basically, like the concept for survivors in Duskmourn is like you've made it through combat and you've survived that. So you're in second main phase, you're tapped because you already attacked. And this perfectly meshes into that strategy where you can go there and be like, all my stuff is tapped. I get all these survivor triggers and I can board wipe right now.
Nice.
Ready for another salty card?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's delve deeper.
So this next one, we're moving on to blue. There's really only one white salty card here. We're on to our one blue card for our list here. And I think this might be the saltiest card printed, man. I mean, there's a few more that are pretty up there, but this one I think might have my vote. So we're looking at the Mindskinner. It costs 3 blue. It is a 10/1 legendary enchantment creature nightmare. The Mindskinner cannot be blocked. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. Again, it's a 10/1 that cannot be blocked.
Yo, blue is a trash color for trash players, but I low-key love this card.
One of the funniest things about this card, honestly, though, is probably the least salty version of it, which is making it lose all abilities and it being like a double ball lightning in blue.
And just smacking someone for 10.
Just smacking for someone for 10, yeah.
I don't think I've ever wanted to build mono blue before until I saw this card, if I'm being totally honest.
And it's legendary, dude. This could be your commander.
Oh, I know. The fact that each opponent mills that many cards is what's gonna upset people. But at the same time, that's what makes it so runnable.
Yeah.
Like, get this out on turn 2. Man, I feel like you could do some nasty things with this, but it's definitely gonna piss people off.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
The funny thing about this, I mean, it's gonna be insane in some like standard formats here and there, I think.
Oh, yeah, dude.
5-shotting people is gonna take some people out, but in Commander, it's particularly funny to me because you still have like more hits than you would need to do if you were hitting life. You're still trying to fight through 100 or like 90 health instead of, actually, I guess it inverts it. It does actually make it less of a resource that you're trying to get through. You're trying to get through 90 of a resource instead of like 120 of a resource.
Yeah.
That's wild.
You talk about milling out versus killing through life.
Right. Normally, that's like the disadvantage that mill has is that it needs to mill out essentially 300 cards instead of dealing 120 damage. In this, you sort of are only needing to mill out 100 cards since you're hitting everybody with that mill. And so that's actually lower than the 120 damage that you need to deal.
And not even 100 cards because everybody drew like 93 cards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting.
So I think one of the most interesting things about the Mindskinner, and one of the reasons why I think it might be really good in the 99, is that if you had this in like, say, an Is It deck and you were playing Gutter Snipe, right? Gutter Snipe, you cast an instant or sorcery, does 2 damage to each opponent. Each opponent takes 2 damage, and for each instance of an opponent taking 2 damage, everybody mills 2 cards. So now Gutter Snipe has hit. Everybody takes 2. That's 6 damage spread out. Everybody mills 6 cards. So anything that does like symmetrical damage gets compounded into this massive windfall of mill with the Mindskinner out. So that's how I would build it. I would want it to be like Secret Commander. I'm trying to tutor out the Mindskinner as fast as possible. And then I'm just doing symmetrical burn to mill people out as hard as I can.
There are also some pretty disgusting things that can happen when in Dimir. For example, Sir Conrad has potential to just go with this because everybody mills 1. So if you happen to hit 4 creatures, okay, now you have 4 more triggers of everybody milling 1. So you can actually like stack out and potentially just win the game if people run enough creatures in their decks.
But just think, you could make like a Voltron equipment deck that just like beefs this bad boy up real thick. And then you're just like, Mill's getting an interesting tool.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like so much of it has been like, you know, these cards that say mill things, and now it's like turning damage into that, which just opens up a lot of possibilities. So people are gonna be pissed about this, but I think it's like super cool, and I want to build it, and I'm gonna build it in some way. What that is, I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, even just like go wide combat strategies, or like you said, Voltron is incredibly viable here. Because every single piece of damage becomes 3 cards.
That's what I'm saying.
Like it compounds so much.
Also, can't be blocked. Like
can't be blocked. There's a lot there too. It's really, really good. It's a cool card. It's a cool card.
It sounds pretty fun.
But yeah, people are not going to enjoy playing against it.
But I'm going to enjoy playing it though.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, shall we move on to the next salty card?
Yeah,
let's do it.
Welp, we're off of white. We're off of blue. Those are very short-lived. Again, like we have a couple when we get to the commander-specific cards, but let's move on to black, which surprise, surprise, there's a bunch of salty cards that are getting printed in black. Let's kick it off with Doomsday Excruciator. Doomsday Excruciator costs 6 black mana. That is 6 black pips for a creature demon flying. When Doomsday Excruciator enters, if it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card, and it is a 6/6. So we have a 6/6 for 6 coming in, hitting everybody with a reverse Doomsday, but for 6 cards instead of 5.
Yeah. I
feel like this is just one of those cards that hits and just ruins your day, then. Like any plan you had, all those cards that are just completely gone. Hopefully you have something useful in the last 6 cards of your deck. I will say the one thing that is weird about it is I can't comprehend how to capitalize off of it other than just having like massive demons on board and like swinging hard into people and removing their decks as a means to remove any answers they might have.
So black doesn't have a lot of bottom of deck manipulation, but like blue does. So this is similar to me where it's like, this could be kind of wombo combo-y, stack the bottom of your deck in a weird way. Like you could just do that with Doomsday because Doomsday like lets you purposefully do it.
Yeah.
But this would be like a little bit more of the Rue Goldberg version where it's like, okay, stack the bottom of your deck in some funky way and play this. And either like, I mean, maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just that you have everybody else draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah.
And like,
or you hit everybody else with the Mindskinner that we were just looking at.
Oh yeah.
Like you guys are looking at like, how do I use my bottom 6 cards? That's all well and good. But you can also just get rid of 6 cards from everybody else and you can win by mill.
That's absolutely true.
Interesting. Yeah. How do we kill someone when they only have 6 cards in the library with something that does 6 damage and is evasive? That's interesting. Yeah. It's
Interesting.
Quite the puzzle. Quite the conundrum.
Not sure how we're going to swing that.
I do like what Tony said about casting Doomsday and then casting the Doomsday Excruciator because one, it's a funny meme. Like if you do that, you should get an achievement, 9 black pips, 3 for Doomsday, 6 for Doomsday Excruciator, and then the Excruciator helps you crack your Doomsday pile by letting you draw an additional card in your upkeep. Like, I don't know. It's pretty flavorful and silly.
There's another deck that I think this could belong in, but I really don't want to tell Sam about it.
Tell me.
Because I don't want to play against this card.
Tell me.
6 mana is an even mana cost.
Oh, Gyruda. Oh, Gyruda, my beloved.
Oh, but it doesn't trigger the same way.
Oh,
You're
yeah, it
not
has to be cast.
casting
It has to be cast.
Oh, oof, thankfully.
Oh, man. What a roller coaster.
Thankfully.
That was literally what I was going to say. That if this is one of those things where it just happened and it wasn't that you needed to cast it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it would be way, way saltier.
Yeah.
It still is good with any commander that can like force some mill. Like Captain Ingathrod, you play this, you get some mill out immediately. You win.
Yeah.
Any of those commanders are going to be able to capitalize it though. It's great.
Yeah. I feel stupid because we were just talking about mill and this is clearly like a mill related card, but hell yeah, it's dope.
I think there is also stuff you could do with like Cauldron of Eternity and like some of the things that Grenzo plays with in order to like stack the bottom of the deck, but there's not a ton of those effects, so it would be tricky.
Yeah. I do also like the art treatment on this card. I'm going to talk about some of the art treatments because I looked through all of the cards. Again, thank you, Wizards. Hashtag sponsored.
Hashtag sponsored.
I got to look through every single card, and I don't think I've ever sat down and looked through every single card in a set before and all of the treatments. And one of the treatments that this has is it's called Borderless Monstrous Reflection. And there are some card arts in this set where it is the reflection of a monster in someone's like sunglasses as they're about to get killed. And it's just like an interesting kind of horror movie flavor that I really dig. And we didn't mention it, but the Mindskinner has the borderless double exposure art. It has like a really interesting kind of like monochrome version of the creature art and then sort of like a double exposed photo. There's another image superimposed on top. It's just kind of got a cool vibe for the people who love borderless out there.
Cha, baby.
Should we move on to the next salty card?
Let's get it.
All right, this next one, it's the dude themselves. It's Valgavoth, Terror Eater. Now, this is the demon that lives in the heart of Duskmourn. This is like the guy who is super spooky, melded into the house, is chomping down on all the fear and misery of the survivors that get trapped in Duskmourn. Nom, 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 nom. He's a big, freaky demon. Valvagoth, Terror Eater, costs 6 and 3 black pips for a total of 9 mana cost. Legendary creature, Elder Demon. We got that Elder creature type on there.
Oof. You know I love the Elder creature type.
I do love it as well. It's awesome. It's a flying lifelink with ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. Ooh.
Brother, ooh.
If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. And it is a 9/9. So we have a 9/9 for 9, flying lifelinker, massive ward cost, shuts down graveyards a la Douthie Voidwalker, and lets you play things sort of like a Douthie Voidwalker, but it's not limited. And you spend life like Bolas's Citadel.
Mm-hmm.
So you play Mindskinner, you mill everybody's stuff, you
Oh my gosh.
then like freaking play all of it with your life.
We really
Just like-
tainted this
Mindskinner.episode.
whole episode. Yeah.
We're just Mindskinner pilled.
Mill doesn't even make any of us that salty, so it's hilarious how much it's
Hey,
getting.
speak for yourself.
That is a lie. Milk
Yeah.
definitely makes me salty.
Yeah, Mill makes Tony and I grumpy.
Not because I'm targeted unfairly.
Mill's fine. Mill did nothing wrong.
Yeah, say that next time I play Gyruda.
Yeah.
So that's Gyruda that did things wrong, not Mill. That's the clones. That's the clones that are problematic.
Gyruda took Mill and tainted it. The purity of Mill. This card is dope. This card is friggin' sick.
It
Like
is
this is
pretty
gonna
sick.
be This is going to be a reanimation target in a lot of decks.
Yeah.
I'm going to be paying a mana to entomb this and then paying, 2 to 3 mana to pop it out on my next turn with like, I don't know, Exhume or Necromancy or what have you, any flavor of Reanimator.
It makes me think of a mean deck I want to make. That's really all it does.
Yeah, it makes me think of mean things too, man.
Yeah.
It's a brutal deck.
Yeah. I will say, I think this struggles to. I mean, people will play this in the command zone. I think it's going to be a specific kind of deck. Like we've seen Tergrid, we've seen decks like this. This is going to be an expensive piece like that, where it comes down and no one wants to deal with it, and someone's going to need to, though. Otherwise, the game is just going to fall apart.
I mean, that's the worst part. Like now, to get rid of it, unless you get a board wipe, you got to sack 3 non-land permanents. Like,
Yeah.
That's
brutal.
That's pretty rough. I mean, if you're on like a token strategy, it's not horrible, but it still sets you back. You still have to be that person to take on the cost to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually in the token strategies, I feel like the point at which it matters is too late already for the token deck. Like if you're at a point where you could sack 3 permanents and they're all your tokens, you kind of already don't care.
Yeah.
So like when to your point, like in that initial building phase, you're not trying to do that yet. Usually you're trying to like gain value over time.
I do think that this is kind of bad in the command zone just because it's 9 mana.
It's 9 mana.
Yeah.
Like 9 mana commander. Put this in your 99 and cheat it into play. Like if you want to really make your friend salty, put it in the 99, cheat it into play.
Do really degenerate stuff.
Yeah, do something really messed up and make your friends truly salty at you. Commit to the bit is what I'm saying. Don't dangle it out there and be like, hey, on turn 7, I might cast this. Cheat it out on turn 4.
I don't know. In a lot of decks, you tend to be able to get that 9 mana kind of quick.
That's true, especially with all the rituals in black. It's probably not too bad, but I don't know. I still think cheating it out like is the way for sure.
For sure. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
At least if it dies the first time, send it to the yard. Don't put it back in the command zone. Y'all ready for another salty card?
Let's do it.
lay it on me.
And this one is another black card. Meat Hook Massacre 2.
I literally thought this was a joke. So like I saw spoilers somewhere, like just in our Discord, I think, like before anything was actually released, and I was like, "This is a joke, right? This can't. It's not real." And then, like, scrolling through the cards, I was like, "Wait, it's real? There's actually another one."
Oh, it's real,
dude. It's meatier,
more meat to eat.
It's more massacre-y. More hooks, twice as many hooks. There's so many hooks. So Meat Hook Massacre 2 or Meat Hook Massacre 11 if you nasty. Costs X and
eat a
4
mass
black.
Eat a mass acre if you're nasty.
Yeah, eat a mass acre. Put that into Scryfall and you'll find it. Costs XX and 4 black pips. Legendary enchantment. When Meat Hook Massacre 2 enters, each player sacrifices X creatures. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. So real quick, before people are scrambling to Scryfall, finality counters, basically, if a creature dies that has a finality counter on it, it gets exiled instead of going to the graveyard. So this is sort of something, a means to prevent you from abusing like recursion strategies with certain creatures. It's kind of a way that the Wizards team has been like limiting that stuff lately. Interesting card. I will say the X cost seems pretty pie in the sky. So like you drop this for 6 mana. You do get this awesome enchantment effect, right? But everybody just sacrifices 1 creature when that happens. Double X costs are just hard. You go from 6 up to math. You go up to 8 and people are doing 2. You go up to 10 and people are doing 3. Like
6+2. How do?
hey.
It's because it's fine. It's because you were doing 2 times 2 plus 4. It's harder.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was doing.
Nah, he was doing 2+2.
I'm dumb. Okay.
I feel like it doesn't matter because most of the time you're just not going to cast for that. You're just going to pay 4 mana for a dope enchantment. And then this probably goes in decks that like do generate a ton of mana, so they don't even care. They're like, oh yeah, I happen to have mana this turn, so I will do a really big Meat Hook Massacre 11.
Yeah.
Like, why not? You know? I'm feeling nasty. I'm doing it. And then like
and we haven't even gotten into the shenanigans you can pull off if you have ways of manipulating finality counters, which there are mechanisms to do in the game. There are things that remove counters, and you can get pretty close to doing some loops that you just need to pay 3 life for pretty rapidly. So this card's got some cool potential, but I do think that it's much tamer than the initial Meat Hook Massacre 1.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess I think it's tamer because it costs more to put it out.
Yeah. I think it hurts more in Commander potentially, but I think this has less of a chance of getting banned in Standard. But I'm also really bad at that format, so only time will tell.
I don't think it's as crushing in 1v1. I mean, maybe you will want to be putting a little bit more mana into those X costs for that to be like it can be a pretty big swing. If your opponent can't pay the life, then you're going to end up with multiple bodies on your board because the conceit is that you sacrifice your own creatures and you get them back immediately, get those ETB effects again, and now you're getting your opponent's creatures, and you're swinging the board from you have 2 creatures, they have 2 creatures, now I have 4 and you have 0, right? So that has the potential for a big swing in a 1v1 format.
Imagine if you had left a Meatbag Marauder out and then play this for 6.
Fleshbag Marauder?
Or Fleshbag Marauder.
That Meatbag Marauder?
The Meatbag Marauder. It's the sequel, Meatbag Marauder 2.
Meatbag Marauder 2.
But that's what I was going to say. I think the salt almost comes from the fact that like the X cost doesn't even matter. The text almost might as well not be on it, in my opinion. Like
just could be a 4 mana enchantment.
Yeah, because like the decks that are gonna abuse this don't care if they make you sack something with like this effect because they've got something on board to make you do it, or in their hand or graveyard, wherever it might be, and like it's gonna get bad quick. But it's also that like hold you hostage kind of thing of like, pay the life or give them tons of value. Like, what are we gonna do?
It makes me think of Athreos, God of Passage, with that pay 3 life clause. I mean, it's kind of turned on its head. There's more theft involved because you're taking your opponent's creatures and stuff. But yeah, I think you just drop this in any Commander game and you're going to get a ton of value. The 4 pips are a little rough, but just play it in a 1 color or 2 color deck and you're going to be fine.
Heck yeah.
Another card.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going in our quest for black. So the next one is Grievous Wounds. Or My Tummy Hurts, which is what I like to call it. If you look at the art. Big bad tummy ache. Costs 3 and 2 black. It's an enchantment aura. Enchant player. Enchanted player can't gain life. Whenever enchanted player is dealt damage, they lose half their life, rounded up.
It's messed up. I love it.
It is messed up.
It is super messed up.
Whenever an enchanted player is dealt damage...
Yes.
Like, is dealt damage. Come on.
Yeah.
Someone could ping you to death with 3 pings?
Yeah.
4 pings? However many pings? I don't math, but it's like
pretty close, right?
Ping you once, go to 40 or 19. Ping you twice, go to like 10.
Simply cannot do the math here live.
Yeah, no, the content is it's not going to be good.
I'm just saying, like, it's
you're right.
It takes so little damage.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's just damage, it should have said combat damage or something. Like, I love that it does it. I love that it does it, but like it should.
It's brutal, man. And you can't gain life. I think my one complaint about this card, and this is one that I hear, that maybe there's some community salt for this card, is that it isn't a curse. Because it's templated exactly like a curse.
Yeah.
But curses just aren't a part of this set, I think that's really what it is. It's just a design decision.
I think my main gripe is that it's 5 mana. I'm like, why can't it be a little cheaper?
Like 1 mana,
Yeah, why is it just 1 mana? rip a curse on somebody.
I mean, it gives me the Virtus vibes, you know,
yeah.
Virtus the Veiled.
Yeah.
It brought me back to my Virtus deck pretty quick.
But honestly, as vicious as it is, I don't know that it's going to be like very useful in a lot of decks. Like you can make someone have an extremely bad time. Like I think the potential for Salt for this card is really high.
It's a screw you in particular card.
Yeah, and it gets added to by the fact that I'm not sure it's worth playing very often.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's worth it. I'll tell you right now, it's worth it. I can envision putting it on a player, and the joy that it would bring me from the sadness and salt that it brings them is high.
All right, look out, Nick. It's good. The fourth member of our pod. Look out, Nick. It's coming to you, man.
As if this isn't a card going in Mogus. I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but this is definitely going in there.
It's a Mogus card too, for sure. It's an evil black enchantment that makes us sad. It's definitely. Oh man, yeah, it's a great one, and it is kind of on a theme. So let's just jump to our next salty card. The next one is Unstoppable Slasher. Tony, you wanted this cheaper. This costs 2 and a black for a zombie assassin with Death Touch. Whenever Unstoppable Slasher deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life, rounded up. When Unstoppable Slasher dies, if it had no counters on it, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. It's a 2/3. This is like the Edward Scissorhands kind of homage, I guess, sort of card of the set. But man, it's got that cutting life totals in half thing again, dude. 2 cards in the set are cutting life totals in half.
Anytime you do that, it upsets people. But it also, like, kind of to Mike's point earlier, it really paints a target on your back.
Yeah.
I had like half your life total deck for a while. And,
yes.
You know, you feel like you won when you hit somebody with something like that. You really do. But you don't actually win the game very much.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, nah, F that. Like, I'm not going to let you like live or let those creatures live, whatever it may be.
I mean, this does have a bit of an answer to that part, though, because a common thing with Virtus is Virtus comes down. Virtus is going to kill me for half my health. Virtus is dead.
Yeah, I'm killing Virtus.
This is now dead, but it's coming back in a few turns without any extra effort.
Yeah.
It totally on its own recurs, which is, I feel like, not a design space we've seen very often, because it's even better than Persist, because it presumes it's going to not have those stun counters on it anymore the next time it dies. If it makes it through those 2 turn cycles, it just keeps doing that.
Sure, but that's the piece, right? Like 2 turns in Commander is a lot.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah,
2
that
like
is true.
rotations of the table beyond this to try and like at that point, people probably forgot about it. And then probably have gotten more removal. You're about to hit somebody with it, and they're like, I'll just remove it again.
I didn't forget about it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. I'm watching those counters tick down, dude. I didn't forget about that shit. I will say, like, I kind of like this effect on a body more than an enchantment, because having it on that curse type enchantment is rough. Like, you are saying, like, screw this one player. You're going to have a bad game. Putting it on a creature lets you spread it around a little bit. And truthfully, with these life total having things in Commander, in like a Commander setting, with these effects that have life total, the first hit is the most impactful. You do get diminishing returns.
First cut is the deepest.
Yeah.
Baby, I know. So,
yeah,
like,
for sure.
I think it's almost better than the other one. It's cheaper. It comes down faster. Chances are it's like hitting a couple people. And it's one of those things. It's a political card where you can be like, don't remove it because I'll send it at Tony over there. He's been bragging about how much he loves the stuff. I'm about to show him how great it is, you know?
It's not just almost better than the other one. I think it is just straight up better than the other one. Yeah.
Love it, though.
All right. How about another one?
Let's move on to red. So this card, Screaming Nemesis, it costs 2 and a red for a creature spirit. It has haste. And it says, whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they can't gain life for the rest of the game. And it's a 3/3. Not an incredibly salty card, but I think anything that says you can't gain life for the rest of the game, like any silver bullet card that has the potential to hose a life gain deck so incredibly bad, deserves to be on the salty card list, you know?
It is aggressive when a card will just be like, yeah, this persistent effect for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't do this anymore. It's Stigma
Yeah.
Lasher, dude. Stigma
Yeah.
Lasher back in Eventide was the first effect that did this. Deals damage to a player, you can't gain life for the rest of the game. I love that stuff.
And now it's got haste. This thing, I think, is going to be a real problem for a decent number of decks out there in the world.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a weird stuffy doll almost. Like it's not indestructible, but it is something where you want to deal a little bit of damage to it so you can redirect that damage to other people. So maybe you have a pinger, maybe you have like a pyrohemia out, and you just cook it just a little bit, just enough to spread some love and lock down people from gaining life for the rest of the game.
Or if anybody has like a 1/1 blocker that they don't care about, or like a 1/5, that can block it.
Oh, yeah.
Very few people will complain about turning off the life gain of one of their opponents. So you can definitely political angle this card as well.
Yeah, I'll take that deal. I'll take that deal any day.
Yeah. Give someone a spirit with a Forbidden Orchard and then do it.
That's even better. You got to love those effects, Short, sweet, and to the salt, as we like to say.
Heck yeah.
Guys, ready for another one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the next two salty cards that we have are in green, and they kind of exhibit a type of salt that we haven't really talked about yet, which is cards that are just very powerful and will probably be abused in interesting ways. And because of that, maybe they're not constricting a resource or blowing up your board, but they're going to do something so broken that is going to make you a little bit salty. And the first one we have is Kona Rescue Beastie. I'm super stoked for this card. Costs 3 and a green, legendary creature, beast survivor, and it has survival, which is a keyword for the set. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona Rescue Beastie is tapped, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, and it's a 4/3.
Yeah, that's one of those broken things for sure.
Any permanent. And a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, you put this down, you attack with it, you put your omniscience into play, and you play out your deck.
Don't you just put it down and then tap it with your Springleaf Drum?
I mean, that
on
is
the turn that it came down.
That is the thing. Yeah, you Springleaf it or
Relic of Legends.
Yeah, Relic of Legends or anything that's gonna tap it. And then you just move to your second main phase and you drop in free value. You don't even have to risk it in combat.
Yeah, I do kind of like that it makes you go through combat. It makes you like change a phase. It's not just like if it's tapped, you can do it. It's like it gives people a second to breathe to do something about it.
Yeah, it's a specific
not much
trigger.
of a second, but it gives you a second.
And this is the whole reason, like survival is the whole reason why they did the templating change with at the beginning of your second main phase instead of at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, which was something that they implemented recently. Because if you had this with extra combats and it wasn't limited to just your second main phase, oh boy, oh boy,
it could get nasty pretty quick.
Broken. I mean, it's already pretty strong. That would be nuts.
Although I think it definitely makes a lot of people upset. Sometimes when it's not a hyper abusable thing, it can be a little fun for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like somebody puts down some big goobery thing and you're like, this is fun. And then eventually you're getting smacked with it and you're like, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
But like it usually starts out like, okay, like lay it on me. And then sometimes they got nothing and they drop like a land or something and you're like, get wrecked.
It is nice too that triggering point is post combat. So it's not like you're dropping out some huge, hasty, massive creature and then hitting everyone
or something.
Yeah, you can't cheat out your Crater Hoof with it and get a bunch of combat damage in because it is post combat.
Yeah. I would still be mad if you put a Vorinclex out.
Yeah, Vorinclex that's a problem.
I think that's exactly what it like. This is the kind of thing where it keeps presenting problems and you have to remove the problems, but it's also a problem, though it looks more subtle.
Yeah.
But what's the next one? You said they both kind of had some power creep issues.
Yeah. So this next one, I was talking about this one with Mike the other day. This card the design makes me mad, dude. It's just so strong. And it's Hedge Shredder. Hedge Shredder costs 2 and 2 green. It's an artifact vehicle. Whenever Hedge Shredder attacks, you may mill 2 cards. I'm just going to read the rest of it before I read the thing that's really busted. Crew 1, and it's a 5/5. The broken piece of text says whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from the library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Like, no limiter, not once per turn, not put one of them on. I mean, they are tapped, like, they're limited somewhat, but like every single one.
Are you Hermit Druid and then just like every single land from your deck?
Exactly.
Do you like Crucible of Worlds but feel like it's just too slow? Do you wish you could play more than one land a turn? There must be a better way.
Yeah, have you ever wanted to have Hermit Druid and Scoot Swarm out at the same time and do broken things with it? Hey, Head Shredder, put your little bugs in a Weed Whacker.
And like Dredge shenanigans. Oh my
Dude.
God. Just slot this right into Sivers, Mike.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff you can do. It's like upsetting.
I love this card. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's why it's on my list, man.
It's fine.
Because I know you're gonna play it.
Because we know how much you're going to play.
Yeah. I know it's gonna do just busted things. There's just so many ways to break this. It is a really cool effect. Like, I'm complaining, but it is an incredibly cool effect. But holy
Mackerel.
cow, it's just gonna do some busted stuff.
That it is. Also, crew 1 for 5/5. That feels like kind of aggressive.
Hey man, I mean, you only need one person to mow the lawn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to crew it, but like,
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think you ever need to crew it. It doesn't even matter that it's a vehicle. Like, that's just icing on the cake to do a little bit of incidental milling. Like, you probably don't even care about that. It's a 4-mana artifact that puts land from your graveyard into play.
yeah, I think that's almost the miss. When there's a line of text on something that nothing else on the card matters, like, it's like,
well, you got to think of limited play
it matters.
for that stuff.
Yeah, this is actually a rare you can play in limited because it's a vehicle, especially with survival in the set.
Oh, yeah, dude. Oh, man.
Yeah, but who cares about limited? That's, that's a format.
You play your Kona Rescue
You have
Beastie.
Kona. You let Kona drive your John Deere tractor.
You got a dog driving a tractor. My Magic the Gathering fantasy is fulfilled.
A freaky little dog driving a tractor, putting lands into play and dropping out
Swinging
of
a baseball
that.
Then you drop in that terror thing, the 9
Balgavoth.
mana.
Oh my God,
Balgavoth.
dude. Yes. I mean, that's a massive flavor fail because the beasties are supposed to be like good guys, but man, Kona also does love to cheat out a Valgavoth for sure. That's something. Whew.
Oh man. Before we do more mean brewing things, what's the next salty card?
All right, so this is the last salty card we have from the main set, and it is Winter Misanthropic Guide.
Man, look at that hair.
I know.
Everybody at home, go look up this card and look at the hair.
He's kind of like the Crow, kind of like he looks like Robert Smith from The Cure, basically.
Right. Yep.
Forget you guys are teenagers. Anywho, looks like Robert Smith from The Cure combined with The Crow, combined with other 80s heartthrob. It costs 1, a black, a red, and a green. It is a Jund card. I think it's the only Jund card in the set. Legendary creature, human warlock, ward 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. And then it has Delirium, which is as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types.
Oh.
And it's a 3/4. So it's got a little bit of group hug. Hey, everybody, we're all drawing a couple extra cards, but you are discarding down. I mean, if Delirium is active, at least a hand size of 3, if not a hand size of 2 or 1, depending on how many card types are in your graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
Refresher, how many card types exist?
There's like 9 card types.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 8 or 9, I think.
So you can pretty easily.
Though there's some like odd ones as well. You may be able to get up to 12 at this point.
Either way, like your hand size is going to be small.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How does that work from like a rules mechanic? I draw the 2 extra cards or whatever. Do I immediately discard once they're in my hand if I'm like over that like gap? Is
No.
it?
It's typical cleanup phase.
Tony, do you not Do you not know how?
Oh, it's just at the cleanup
Do you not know
phase?
how hand size works?
Well, I guess I wasn't thinking of it from the perspective that like it doesn't matter until
You're right.
the
You weren't thinking.
okay. You guys.
Get that misunderstanding of the game out of here. It's all right, Tony. But yeah, it's normal hand size rules. So you'll only discard at the end of your turn. So people do get a chance to use those 2 cards.
Well, it's like I hate this because I don't even think about it until like I don't think about it in that way. I'm like, oh, you're just limiting my hand size. Does that mean when I draw my cards, it has to be lower? It's like, no, it's like when you go to discard, whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of your turn, you're discarding down to like, again, 3 or 2 is probably like the average case scenario. But then you get to draw an additional 2 cards at the start of this person's turn. So you're going back up to 4 or 5 cards in hand. So it's really shutting down like your instant speed interaction and forcing you to kind of dump things out of your hand and ideally keep value that goes into your turn. You get refilled a little bit, but like with this out, you're going to struggle to hit land drops. You're just going to struggle a lot. It's kind of like a weird design for forced discard, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely seems like a forced discard kind of scenario. It actually reminds me a lot of Yurlock as like a space for Jund to play in, where it's like, hey, I'm going to give you more of this, but you're not going to like it.
Yeah, exactly. Like here's more resources and I'm going to make it painful for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's a totally unique design. I don't think we've ever seen a Magic card like this. And people building around this is going to be really annoying.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good.
Nobody's going to like it.
Yeah. So that concludes the salty cards that we have for the main set. But guys, that was a lot of salt. I think we should take a very brief sugar break to kind of cleanse ourselves from some of the salt and talk about some cards that we're looking forward to in this set. If you're new to Howling Salt Mine, every once in a while we get a story that isn't quite as salty as the other stories we talk about. It's a little bit more sugary sweet. And that's when we have a sugar break and we're just kind of happy for a little bit. And we think about the good, interesting things of Magic instead of the stuff that makes you pissed off. Tony, do you have a card to kick us off here?
Yeah, I think one of my problems is that 2 of the salty cards are my sugar breaks.
Tony,
the Mindskinner and Grievous Wound. But
oh no,
some insight into our play group.
there are some other things that make me a little happy. I am a big borderless boy, and I don't like blue, but Expropriate is being reprinted, and
it is
the borderless is hot.
Yeah, that's in the special guest series for Duskmourn. We're getting a reprint of Expropriate.
Gotcha. It's definitely hot.
Just another salty card.
I know, but it's like I don't even need it to be played. I just like looking at it, you know.
Mike, what's your little bit of sugar that you're looking forward to with this new set?
I've got a couple things I'm pretty excited about. I think one of them is the cycle of dual lands that's in it. I think it's a really nice land cycle. Basically, the whole cycle is when the land enters, it enters tapped unless a player has 13 or less life. So really nice in the 20 card formats. Also kind of nice in Commander still. Like, you know, it's mostly a tapped land, but in really late game situations, it'll come down. Or if you have decks that are going to manipulate your life total, like Willow Dusk or things like that, the lands become incredibly relevant really fast because then they're nice, just another nice kind of cheap alternative for multi-lands. But other than that, I'm pretty excited about a couple things. There's Marvin, Murderous Mimic.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a 2-mana legendary artifact creature toy. Marvin, Murderous Mimic has all activated abilities of creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. So it's sort of like a weird necrotic ooze, but it assembles it all from your board state instead of from the graveyard. I think that's pretty neat. And then the other one I'm excited for is something that I'd like to test in Sisay for CDH, and it's Nashi, Searcher in the Dark.
That one's sick.
It's a blue and a black for a 2/2 menacing rat ninja wizard. When Nashi, Searcher in the Dark, deals combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. You may put any number of legendary and or enchantment cards from among them into your hand. And if you put no cards into your hand this way, put a +1/+1 counter on Nashi. So if you whiff, your next trigger is going to be a little bigger. And if you're running a lot of legendaries and or enchantments, you have decent chances of hitting it. Also, it's blue-black, which is a handy pair of colors to get early in Sisay.
I really like that card because it feels like an interesting design space for Dimir that we haven't seen, which is like card advantage from mill, focusing on legendaries.
And enchantments, because it's rooms.
The rooms.
Searching the rooms. Indeed.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I did not. Oh, man, that's great.
There's so many room jokes that could be made.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
So I've got a couple that I'm stoked on. I think the big one is Aminatu Veil Piercer. This is the new Aminatu, which is like the face commander for the Miracle Worker deck. And Aminatu says it costs 1, a white, a blue, and a black. Legendary creature, human, wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 2. And then each enchantment card in your hand has Miracle, and its Miracle cost is equal to its mana cost, reduced by 4 generic mana. And it's a 2/4. I just think Miracle is a really interesting effect. Oh, if people don't know what Miracle does, is you can cast that card for its Miracle cost when you draw it, if it's the first card you drew this turn. So casting with Miracle circumvents casting time restrictions. And it's not just on your turn. You can do it on other people's turns. So it's kind of an interesting way to be like flashing out enchantments and cheating mana cost. And Magic is just a game that's full of these massive high cost enchantments. A lot of the room enchantments are perfect examples of this, but there's tons and tons of enchantments out there that cost like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana that we just don't really play in Commander just because they're kind of expensive. But to be able to drop those for like 2 or 3 mana and manipulate the top of your deck and kind of manage how much you're drawing each turn just seems really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting space. Any of those like manipulate deck things I always find interesting, where there's the top, the bottom, wherever it might be, 6th card down, 7th card down, like whatever it is. I always think that's fun and interesting. And there's like becoming more and more support for those types of things. There's like just enough, and it's just like interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like a little bit of scrying and stuff like that can go a long way. And then repeatable draw that you can trigger easily on other people's turns after you do some scrying and top deck manipulation. Like there's a pretty good chance that you can cheat 2 to 3 enchantments out using this Miracle effect in the course of a EDH turn cycle, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, should we get back to the salt?
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the salty cards from the Duskmourn Commander set, and there's not many, but let's jump into the few that we have. This first one is the alternate commander in the Endless Punishment precon, and it is the Lord of Pain.
This is my problem so much. My sugar was these.
Yeah.
Like, I also like this card.
I actually did get excited about this one too.
I think a lot of people are stoked for this.
Like, I want to build this card, to be honest.
So the Lord of Pain costs 3, a black and a red. Legendary creature, human assassin with menace. Your opponents can't gain life. Again, we're seeing a lot of things that just like restrict life gain in this set. Whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to the chosen player. And it's a 5/5. 5/5 for 5 with menace is already a pretty awesome rate. And then you have this extra burn effect. It's kind of like a weird Vial Smasher, Karavek the Merciless kind of effect.
I was say it's way more targeted than a Vial Smasher.
Yeah. Karavek the Merciless is whenever an opponent casts a spell, Karavek the Merciless deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to any target. So it's sort of a weaker Karavek. Karavek costs 7 mana. This costs 5. And this is only the first spell.
But it's any player. You can cast spells as well.
Yep. It's any player on their first spell each turn. So you get like some interaction being thrown down on other turns. You're getting multiple triggers. It's pretty cool.
There's some painful things you can put in this. I maybe did a little bit of brewing on this one. There's some pretty funny things like Caravan Horde Dragon, which costs X less to cast, where X is the number of artifacts an opponent controls. You can play it for 2 and deal 9 damage to somebody. That kind of thing is pretty funny. There's also Emrakul, the Promised End, which costs 1 less for each card type among cards in your graveyard. We've already talked about that a little bit this set. You could be paying like 6 mana for 13 damage. So there's quite a few things that get some pretty crazy discounts that are pretty funny.
I mean, even just casting stuff out for free and like beaming somebody with like the massive damage that could come from it. Like, I think there's a lot of manipulation you can do to just smash people with massive damage with this card.
Yeah. Blasphemous Act, dealing 9 damage to an opponent as well. It's pretty fun.
I even think
Yeah.
there's going to be so much chip damage over time. Like people play spells on their turn.
Oh, yeah.
And generally speaking, if you get it out on turn like 4 or so, people want to play like 4 mana, 5 mana spells. They're not just going to like play a 1-drop because this happens. And also, it doesn't feel as bad when it's like, oh, 4. It's 4 damage. Where are you going to put it? And you're like, yeah, I'm going to put it on your face, Sam. You're like, okay, whatever. You take it down and you're just losing track of like over the course of the game. That could be like 20, 30 damage like pretty quickly.
People can play around it, but I think it has a little bit of the slicer effect too, where people will actually potentially play into it rather than play around it because that damage isn't going at you. So you might as well run out your biggest spell as your first spell in your turn because it's going at someone else. So you're getting free damage for kind of everybody feels that way about the spells they're casting.
Guaranteed to be another player. Like that is a really good point. Like, I mean, this is just one of those commanders. It's like Mogus that is going to speed up games. Mm-hmm. If you're at the LGS and you need to play one more quick one, reach for the Lord of Pain.
This is the kind of effect you want on the board. Yeah. What's the next card?
So the next one is a blue enchantment creature nightmare. This is one of the nightmare cards. They're all enchantment creatures in this set. And it is Fear of Sleep Paralysis. It costs 5 and a blue, flying, and it has an effect called Eerie whenever Fear of Sleep Paralysis or another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. And then the most important thing it says is stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. And it's a 6/6. So it's just permanent tapping down. I think it's interesting how they do it with stun counters now, since we've had that template change. I think it's kind of an older change, but over the past few years. But yeah, I mean, anything that locks down permanents permanently is going to get people salty for sure.
Yeah, I hate this.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a weird opposite aura shards. Instead of your creatures killing enchantments, your enchantments entering turn off creatures.
That's interesting. I mean, there are definitely ways to break this. Like you could play Enchanted Evening where everything is an enchantment now, and every single permanent that you have come into play is going to trigger this, and you're just going to lock down your opponent's boards. Hilda of the Icy Crown. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you can pay 1, and you make 4/4 elementals, +1/+1 counters, scry, and draw a card. Seems pretty good.
I guess it's not stun counters, though. There's definitely something with stun counters.
Yeah, I know there's some commander that loves stun counters, but I mean, Hilda loves to tap things down, and Fear of Sleep Paralysis is going to help you tap things down.
Yeah, F this. Like, I don't like this. Let's move on. Let's not continue trying to brew this. Let's like move past it and know that it sucks.
So the last one I have for the Duskmourn commander decks is Barb Flare Gremlin. It costs 3 and 1 red, creature gremlin, first strike and haste. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, if Barb Flare Gremlin is tapped, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. Then that land deals 1 damage to that player. It's a 3/2.
That card's cool.
Really cool card.
Huh.
It's sort of like a mana flare and like mana barbs combined.
Hence Barb Flare.
Yeah, hence Barb Flare Gremlin. Mana flare doubles mana production, mana barbs. You take a damage every single time you tap a land.
I love these subtle nods to past cards from Magic's history. In the best way, I do.
I mean, Mana Barbs is pretty salty. I feel like this has the potential to be a fairly salty card. Also, because it has the clause of Barb Flare Gremlin being tapped, there's definitely going to be situations where half the table in an EDH game gets the double mana and the other half doesn't, or someone plays it wrong and gives somebody double mana and they just win the game. You know, I feel like there's a lot of salt that could just come from situations playing this card.
Yeah.
Again, they put these relevant effects too on something with haste, and in this case, first strike. It's pretty tough to block a 3-power first strike haste thing, like with so no preparation for it. So I think this gets to tap on the turn. It comes down pretty often.
It's kind of like our buddy Winter, where it's sort of this weird like group hug, group slug kind of build where it's hurting you a little bit, but it's also just really interesting. I dig it.
Yeah.
So that's our last salty card for the set. We've gone through the main set. We've gone through the commander cards, and that's all the salt that we could find. And those are the cards that stuck out to us the most as the salty cards for Duskmourn.
Well, I've had a great time exploring the spooky house of salt that we've encountered here. I don't know about you guys. How are you feeling?
Well, it's interesting to look at a set and like think about what do we think will make people salty, and then like hear back, you guys were all wrong and you suck, or like you got it right. So I think there's an element of like that's interesting. We just haven't done that, and to like get a chance to look at the things beforehand through our own lens and then see what the community actually thinks afterwards will be interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree, Tony. I think it's really fun to look at a set front to back, pick out what we think are the salty cards, talk about them, and then like.
And then
I think the really funny thing was that for most of the cards, we were like, this is actually cool and I want to build it. And like, that's kind of the epilogue here is that a lot of these salty cards, we like to put them in our decks, you know, because it is kind of fun to make your friends a little bit salty. That's a core aspect of EDH. And I love that every set, no matter what it's about, no matter what the subject matter is, the theme, the plane we're on, there's going to be some busted cards that just get you a little bit frustrated and a little bit salty. And it's cool that Duskmourn has them too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks again to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this episode, hitting us up.
Hashtag sponsored.
Taking a chance on the Salty Boys. If you out there love this episode, if you want more Howling Saltmine content like this, make it known. Make it known on social media. You know, be like, hey, Howling Saltmine, these guys are great brand ambassadors for Wizards of the Coast, and I want them to do this more often because we would love to do this more often. This is super, super fun to dissect the set, look at all the cards, check it out. Like we said, keep an eye on our social media. You can check us out on Instagram, where we are The Howling Saltmine, or find us over on Twitter, where we're at Howling Saltmine. Our fans know that we are inconsistent with the and it is no different when it comes to our Instagram and Twitter handles. We also have a link that we're going to be putting in the show notes of this episode. If you like this episode, you want to hear more of this, if you like this ambassador content and you want to check out more, click on that link. That is something that the WotC team are keeping their eyes on. And the more that link gets clicked, the more people are checking out cards on that link, the more Big Papa WotC is going to fund shit. Is going to fund the more Papa WotC is going to fund stuff like this, and hopefully invite Howling Saltmine back because we had a really great time. As always, if you just like our vibe, if you want to hear more Howling Saltmine content, check out our other episodes where we are reading 3 salty stories every week from the community about Magic the Gathering games gone wrong. Anything that's getting salty, people throwing cards, people screaming at each other in the LGS, people pub stomping, all those fun things. We read them, dissect them, tell some jokes, and talk about the playgroup dynamics at play.
Yeah. And I'm more free.
He's not trapped in a room.
Yeah, and we do cuss a bit more in those episodes. So content warning when you go check those out. The vibe's a little different. If you like the Howling Saltmine already, or you're a new listener and you want to support us, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Howling Saltmine. You can check out our merchandise on Bonfire. You can check out our playmats over on Jankmats. And another way that you can support us is to give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app of choice. Look at me go. I'm keeping it short, sweet, and to the salt. The true prospectors out there know that I typically ramble all that stuff out at the end of an episode. Once again, thanks again, WotC. Hashtag sponsored. Can't wait to rip some packs over on Instagram or wherever we end up doing that. Can't wait to crush my friends with this Amanatu deck that I'm going to really break and make incredibly unpleasant to play against.
Oh boy, upgraded precon. Here we go.
Yeah.
Just a couple of upgrades. Orcish Bowmasters.
I just
one
can't
ring.
wait for the Mindskinner. I can't wait for the Mindskinner to be in 3 different decks in our pod.
I know.
A Dimir deck from Mike, Is It deck from Sam, and just a mono blue Voltron deck from me.
And it's going right in Nick's Bruvac deck. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. It's going to be in 4 decks.
Yeah.
Mill did nothing wrong. Anywho, thanks again for tuning into this episode, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it. We did. As always, stay salty. And don't forget to draw an additional card during your draw step.
It's the Howling Saltmine. The Howling Saltmine.
And if this is your first episode of the Howling Salt Mine podcast, this
Go
is
away.
a bit of a different thing. Did you say go away?
Yeah.
Tony.
No.
It's not, well, because it's not normal. We always say go, like, look at one of the
No,
old things.
listen to this because it's sponsored content. We need people to listen to it. That's the whole point.
Right.
Salt is, where do I go from there?
I don't know, but normally I don't feel so like singled out. I feel like you're just saying all these things that make me upset.
You know, that dude from that band. You know what I mean?
The hair band.
No.
What is that?
Elvis. Panic at the Disco. My Chemical Romance.
No, none of those. That's way too new. Yeah, it's sort of like
Ooh Corner. What was that guy's name?
so let's go in Wooberg order.
Wooberg or Woo Gerber?
Wugber,
Wugber, yeah.
Tony.
We can say it once. PG-13 rules are literally once.